Okay, so today I want to continue. This is lesson 8 in the Behind the Scenes series, or Battle Over the Earth. I'm going to talk about, yesterday we talked, or the last time, about the angels, the different ranks of angels, and that there are different ranks. We talked about fallen angels from Jude 6 and 2 Peter 2. We talked about Michael, the archangel, from Jude 9 and 1 Thessalonians 4. So we established that there are different ranks among the angels who stand around God's throne, right? Okay, and I introduced the concept of God having another family besides his human family. That sounds really bizarre, I know, but stay with me. Today I want to talk about another supernatural being or spiritual being we all know. We call him Satan. He's the adversary. He's adversary in Hebrew. We've talked about that Hebrew meaning before in the earlier lessons. I want to talk about the fact that he is also called a son, S-O-N, in Isaiah 14, a very familiar passage to us regarding him. He's called Lucifer, son of the morning, fallen from heaven. Remember? Okay. Now, let's go to Isaiah 14 where that is. And I'm going to show you. He starts out in this passage. We start out in this passage where we know that the prophet is actually talking about the king of Babylon. Right? Let's see. So he's talking about, in verse 4 of Isaiah 14, you'll take up this proverb against the king of Babylon and say, how the oppressor has ceased, the golden city ceased, blah, blah, blah. He's talking about Babylon. The golden city is going to be judged, okay? But then we get down, hell, and he says, hell from beneath is excited about you, to meet you at your coming. He's giving a judgment against this king of Babylon, right? And in Isaiah's time, remember, Jerusalem was doing fine. They weren't attacked by Babylon. So this is all 100 years into the future what's going to happen. But anyway, then in verse 12, the prophet says, from the word of the Lord, how you have fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning. How you are cut down to the ground, you who weakened the nations. Now, we've talked about before how in the prophetic scriptures, prophets saw many time frames at once because in God's mind, there's no time, right? He sees everything, the beginning from the end. And when the prophet is shown things, sometimes he's shown all things, different time frames. The Lord shows him this and that, and he's not sure which time frame that to put these things in. So all of a sudden Isaiah starts seeing and hearing, you've fallen from heaven, Lucifer, son of the morning. You're cut down from the ground. So who is this Lucifer? And he has fallen from heaven. So there's a big clue. We can't be talking about the king of Babylon. There's more clues in here, but this in this passage, this Lucifer, in Hebrew, it's Halal. It's not Lucifer. Lucifer is a Latin word, I believe, from the Latin Vulgate, which is the early Latin translation of the Hebrew Scriptures. I believe it was translated from Hebrew. It may have been translated from the Greek Scriptures, from the Septuagint. I'm not sure. I think that's right. I think it was from the Greek. Anyway, so Lucifer, actually, the Hebrew manuscript is not Lucifer, it's Halal. Halal means shining one. It actually goes on to mean praise later, which tells us something about this star of the morning, this son of the morning, his job in heaven. This may be one of the passages used by conservative scholars to, how they came up with, what his job was praise. Now, there are other ones too, but anyway, we all know that Satan was before the throne, and we believe he was involved in praise. Okay. So let me see what else I wrote about here. About this here. He was a heavenly being fallen to earth, because it says in verse 12. So we know we're not talking about the king of Babylon here. The prophet has switched time frames and scenes. He's fallen to the earth to do something with nations. We know that because, well, I'm going to have to read further down here. You have said in your heart, this is verse 13, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit on the mount of the congregation on the farthest sides of the north. Well, we'll go on to the nations part in a minute. But the thing I wanted us to look at right now, he's fallen from heaven. And then it says, so I want to bring out the part that he says, son of the morning. Isaiah says, how you have fallen from heaven, Halal, shining one, son of the morning. Now, son is B'nai, the Hebrew normal Hebrew word for son, which is also the word in our passage, sons of God in Job 1, and the sons of God in Genesis 6, who mated with the daughters of men. So we're talking about sons, the normal word for sons, and then it's son of the morning. Well, that morning in Hebrew is a poetic morning. It's used metaphorically most of the time. It's not the normal word for morning. Let's see, I wrote some stuff about that. It refers to light or dawn, D-A-W-N. In other words, Satan was referred to as very much a representative or coming from. That's what the word son means. You came from something, right? You came from the light. Here it means he came from the light or from dawn. Well, light is symbolic for the presence of God. So stay with me. There's more here. So then we see in verse, we just read it, verse 13, what this Halal, son of the light, is saying, who has fallen from heaven. So he was in heaven, we know, and he was a son of light, symbolic for the presence of God. He was a son, and his name is Halal, the shining one. You who weaken the nations, verse 13, for you have said in your heart, I'll ascend into heaven. Now he's fallen, but he's going to ascend back up, he says. Exalt my throne above the stars of God. There's something in there for us in a minute and later. I will also sit on the mount of the congregation. Now, this congregation is the same Hebrew word. It means to be, it comes from the word to appoint. So if you're in a congregation, you're appointed to that congregation. And that's the same exact word as in Psalm 82, where we saw God sits, Elohim sits among, let's see, let me read it because I've forgotten the exact wording. Elohim, God, stands in the congregation, that's the same word, of the mighty. And that word mighty in Hebrew is simply El, which means God. He judges among the gods. Elohim. Elohim judges among the Elohim is actually what it is in Hebrew. Okay, stay with me. Now, so this congregation in Psalm 82 is the same as the congregation that this Halal, the son of light, wanted to sit among. After he'd fallen from heaven, he wants to go back and sit among the congregation. He says, I'm going to sit up there on the mount of congregation on the farthest sides of the north. Now, this word for north is very interesting also. I'm going to talk about that some more. I will ascend above the heights of God. I'll be like the Most High. Okay, now, oh, there's so much in here. I will be like the Most High, he says. Remember in Psalm 82, that we've looked at, in verse 6, God says, Elohim says, you are gods. You are Elohim. You are children of the Most High. This son of the morning who has fallen from heaven in Isaiah 14 wants to sit in the congregation and wants to be like El Elyon, like the Most High. Now, in 82, Psalm 82, you've got these sons of God. No, you don't have sons in Elohim. You have children of the Most High, and he calls them gods. So I'm just trying to get our point across that Satan is a supernatural being, obviously. He lived in heaven. He was before God in Job 1, accusing Job. He was before God, before the angel of the Lord, and these who stood before him in Zechariah 3. He's a supernatural being. Here, he's called son of light. I'm trying to get the point across that there were sons of some sort around God, around God's throne, that were supernatural beings. Because Satan, remember let's see, we'll go down the passages. Luke 22:3 and John 13:27, we have the phrase, Satan entered Judas. Further on in Isaiah 14, I want to read you something here. We left off at verse 14, I'll be like the Most High. And then he says, you're going to be cast down to the pit. And then in verse 16, he says, those who see you will gaze at you, talking about Satan being cast down to the pit, and consider you, saying, is this the man who made the earth tremble? Now he's calling this being who lived in heaven, who's been cast down to earth, who decided he wanted to be like the Most High. He's got him a man. Is this the man, people will say, who made the earth tremble, who shook kingdoms, who made the world as a wilderness and destroyed its cities, who did not open the house of his prisoners? Okay, that's the part I wanted you to see. Who made the man who made the earth tremble, who shook kingdoms. Satan entered Judas. This one author I have read a good bit, who I showed you the book before, it's called The Antichrist. He believes that the Antichrist, this figure, there's not the Antichrist in Scripture. That's one of my pet peeves. He's not called the Antichrist. There's a spirit of Antichrist. He's called the beast. He's called the man of lawlessness. He's called the son of perdition. And a few others, I think. But anyway, this man, A.W. Pink, in his book The Antichrist, says he believes that the figure in Revelation, the beast, will be an incarnation of Satan, because he does everything, he copies everything that God does, and Christ came as a man. He believes that the figure in Revelation, the beast, will be an incarnation. Well, I mean, if you look at that passage, those passages in the Gospels where it says Satan entered Judas, was Judas, and A.W. Pink thinks that he did also with Judas, that the son of perdition, because he was named that in I don't know if it was Acts or one of the Gospels. Speaking of Judas, said that son of we lost the son of perdition. So anyway, all very interesting. I wanted you to see today, the main thing I want you to see, because I'm getting us to the point of seeing that perhaps God has a non-human family called the sons of God in Job 38, shouting for joy, called the sons of God who mated with the daughters of women in Genesis 6, called the sons of God whom Satan appeared among in Job 1, children of the Most High in Psalm 82. Stay with me. The reason I'm making all these points right now is because I want you to see that these sons of God are very interested in having territory on the earth. And these are also ones whom God gave free will. Satan, one of the sons, a son of light, whom I believe was part of those sons of God in Job 1, Genesis 6. Satan had free will. God, they're part of God's creation, these sons of God who fell. They're part of God's creation. Angels were created by God, right? We all know that. So they're angels. They're ministering spirits sometimes, but they are fallen angels and fallen spirits. Okay, we're going to go on. And then we're going to go, next time I'm going to read to you, I'm going to read from the book of Enoch, and we've been afraid of this book. We as Protestants, we're afraid of the Apocrypha, and we're afraid of Enoch because they're extra biblical writings. But Jude 14 quotes the book of Enoch. Obviously, the New Testament writers were not afraid of Enoch. They read this book, and this was part of their worldview. And if we want to understand the scriptures, we've got to get into the worldview of those people who were writing it. Right? So I'm going to show you where the book of Enoch parallels our scriptures so much. But just one passage. I'm going to read to you what Enoch says about those fallen angels. All right. Stay with me. Love you guys.